What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Tomatodito Boxing Show, and let's dive in. This past weekend was such a great weekend. We've talked about the Las Vegas event that took place, and the loaded card that was the Benavides Andrade card. And now let's jump over to the 3 Arena in Dublin, where an amazing, huge rematch took place. Amazing. I'll hold that aside because we'll dive into it right now. But yes, I could say amazing as far as the presence, the crowd, the event, the way that everything was set up. That was amazing. The scenery, the atmosphere, that was amazing. The main event, not so much. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a big rematch that loomed and that was made because of this big event that took place earlier this year in May, where Katie Taylor, who is the undisputed champ at 135 pounds, moved up one division north to 140 pounds and challenged Chantelle Cameron, who is the undisputed champion in that division. So we had lightweight versus junior welter or super lightweight, depending on the organization as they deem it. But Chantelle Cameron ended up coming out successful in that card. It was a tight fight. It was a closely contested fight, and we had the same very similar type fight this past Saturday, but there were some differences, and there has been a lot of talk of a little home cooking that took place in Dublin on Saturday, which ended up seeing Katie Taylor walk away with Chantelle Cameron's titles and with the victory and becoming an undisputed champion in 2 weight divisions simultaneously, something that only Claressa Shields had accomplished. Katie Taylor's a legend. Let's just put this out right before we get into breaking down this specific fight. What Katie Taylor has done for not just boxing, but specifically for women's boxing, what she has meant to women's boxing, what she has accomplished, and the levels that she has taken the sport of boxing to, and the recognition that she's brought to women's boxing is second to none. Of course, big names of yesteryear, when I was growing up, and those of you that are too young to remember, we had Muhammad Ali's daughter, Laila Ali, fighting in the 90s. We had Mia St. John, Christy Martin, one of the bigger names that we still recognize today. And in an episode that I actually, if you go back to check out my early catalog, I actually dedicated an episode to this fighter, that being Holly Holm, because she had been and should be the original GWOAT. I know Claressa Shields self-proclaims as the GWOAT and has nicknamed herself that, and people run off with that. She's accomplished a lot herself, Claressa Shields, and quite likely she might very well go down as the most winningest woman in the sport of women's boxing, the most accomplished at that. But Amanda Serrano's right there to challenge her, and now Katie Taylor with this recent victory this past weekend. But Holly Holm was by far the most accomplished. And then she moves on to MMA and then becomes a champion in the UFC. What she's done, her body of work, is the reason why I dedicated an entire episode to her. So you could go back and check that out at your own time. And I really think you'll enjoy that, because it was just a lot of facts and a lot of accomplishments, and just reading down basically her list and her resume, just to be able to prove how accomplished Holly Holm is, was, and has been for the sport, for combat sports in general. Now, what Katie Taylor accomplished this past Saturday is something that she didn't need to do, but it definitely cements her legacy as one of the greatest women fighters of all time. Is this what she needed to have cemented that legacy? No, she's done enough. An Olympic champion, has dominated, specifically her division, has taken all challengers, all comers. She's 37 now. Her body of work speaks for itself. And we're starting to see that at 37, in the latter part of her career, is where she's starting to experience the more profitable paydays of her career. And now we have a dilemma on our hands. Because this past Saturday, it may not be the most popular opinion, but let's just take off our fan hat off. And this whole show is from a fan for the fans. But what I mean about taking the hat off is the bias hat. When I grew up a huge Oscar de la Hoya fan. Huge Oscar de la Hoya fan. And if I couldn't afford the pay-per-view, or my family couldn't afford a pay-per-view, I would do everything possible to see if a friend's family was hosting it, and if I could get invited, or if we happened to be around a store or somewhere where they were showing some type of preview to it. There was no internet streaming sites back then. There was cable boxes. There was jailbroken cable boxes, of course. I think that's always existed. Somebody trying to get an upper hand. That's always existed. But more so than not, those pay-per-views back then were $29.99, $35.99, $39.99, and what have you. So they were somewhat affordable, but different times. People would do the big gatherings, and that's something that always attracted me to the sport of boxing. As a fan, the fact, the camaraderie and the family feel and the aspect of it, that aspect of it. Huge Oscar de la Hoya fan. Now, how many gifts did Oscar de la Hoya receive? Well, some will argue that he didn't deserve to get the Pernell Whitaker decision, similar to what Pernell Whitaker did to Julio Cesar Chavez. People cry robbery. Understandably so, because Pernell Whitaker, in my opinion, beat Julio Cesar Chavez. But that was a cultural issue if you spoke against Chavez, let alone when Oscar de la Hoya beat Julio Cesar Chavez, how big it was in Southern California for the Hispanic culture to be speaking against the Mexican legend that is Chavez and cheering for a young kid who was Mexican American but not fully Mexican. Not fully from here or from there, but he was an Olympic champ, and he attracted a lot of eyes and put a lot of butts in the seats and became the face of boxing. Did he receive a gift against Pernell? Did he deserve to lose that fight against Trinidad? Those are arguments that to this day are very polemic and very lively with people from that generation. What about his gift at the expense of Felix Sturm, where the setup was that De La Hoya was moving up to middleweight, fought a middleweight and Felix Sturm, and in my opinion, he lost. In my opinion, watching that fight as a young adult, watching that fight, I could not believe my eyes. I could not believe that Oscar De La Hoya was getting it handed to him. He was just getting outpowered, outpunched, outlanded. But somehow he walked away with the decision, and I felt it inside. I felt that he did not win. But the narrative back then was he was going up to middleweight, and there was a big, high-profile fight looming at the distance, and it was going to be between him and Bernard Hopkins, which ended up happening. Felix Sturm lost that title to Oscar De La Hoya. Not just a decision, but the title. The Mayweather De La Hoya fight To this day, very polemic. People will landslide just say, oh, Mayweather schooled him, Mayweather this, Mayweather that. Remember the cards, remember the fight. Go watch that fight. I've seen that fight multiple times. And in my eyes, I've always stood that Oscar De La Hoya did enough to have pulled out that decision. But there was a changing of the guard that took place. This is kind of what we witnessed on Saturday. Again, I started this episode by praising Katie Taylor, and I continue to express that. So those of you that are huge Katie Taylor fans, let's just remove the bias and just call it like it is. Because if she was going to do a boxing fight, once again, repeat a boxing style fight from a distance, try to come in and out, like she did in the first fight. She was getting picked apart in the first fight, even though she had flurries, and that's Katie Taylor's style now in the latter part of her career. Even so, in her last 4 fights, 2 with Chantelle, the one with Carvajal, and the Amanda Serrano fight. Just go back and watch those fights, and you'll see what I'm talking about. She's older, she's 37, she's deteriorating, and slowing down before our eyes. We're seeing her start fighting from the middle rounds on, and these are 2-minute rounds, 10-round championship fights. They're customary for women's sports, for the women's boxing. And she's fighting from the middle rounds and on, sometimes as early as a 4th round, with her mouth open and her hands down, gasping for air, tired. She spends those energy spurts. It's costing her a lot more energy than it would. She does throw punches in bunches. She delivers fast. She delivers heavy. But those flurries are costing her a lot more energy and draining her a lot more than they would a few years back, just a few fights back. I'm just talking the last 4 fights. This was the case on Saturday. These 2 women just faced each other in May. And we saw an even more deteriorated Katie Taylor this past Saturday. Mouth open from round 3 and on. That's how hard Chantelle Cameron's hitting. That's the pace that she was pushing, and it was weighing on Katie Taylor. I'm appreciative and grateful for what Katie Taylor has done for the sport of women's boxing, but we have a dilemma here. Is this an issue of Matchroom just milking her for everything she's worth and for everything that she could give in the remaining fights of her career? In my opinion, there's only 2 more fights left for her, and that's it. And they're going to be big cash cow, big money grab type fights. And this could be the narrative and the scenario that we witnessed being set in place this past Saturday. She challenged, she dared to be great in May, and came up short. But from the onset of the negotiations, go back and watch the lead up to the fight, watch the interviews that Chantelle Cameron had, and she's clearly stating that the tables were turned against her from the onset. Her demands were not met. Her demands were not heard. She was willing, after the first fight and her victory, she said, I felt that the fair thing to do was I would go down to 135 and challenge her for her titles. Denied. I wanted to apply a rematch clause to my favor. Denied. So if she was to lose the titles, she knew that she was on the losing end contractually and physically, professionally, because she lost her titles. That's the scenario that played out. 3 different judges, same venue. The 3 Arena in Dublin in May, the 3 Arena in Dublin this past Saturday. 3 different judges. The judges in May had 96-94 scores, and one had it a draw. 2 96-94s and one a draw. That's how tightly contested, and how gritty of a fight it was between these 2 championship women. But Chantelle Cameron did enough. And some feel that the scorecard should have been a little wider in May. But there was no arguing that she bested Katie Taylor in May. We had a similar scenario start this past Saturday. Round 1 was as good as if it would have been round 11. Chantelle Cameron picked up where she left off. Katie Taylor came out strong, came out fast, and came out firing. The interview that Chantelle Cameron had with the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, she mentions, I'm ready. Katie Taylor is going to do one of 2 things that I'm anticipating. I want to be aware and be careful with her head, because she tends to lunge forward when delivering her flurries and her combinations. She lunges forward and leans in with her head, which causes head bumps, head butts, and ended up marking her up fairly good in May and cutting her. So she was going to prepare for that, be aware for that, and she expected and anticipated that Katie Taylor, knowing that Katie Taylor started slow in the last fight in May and then built up from the middle rounds on, picked up the pace, she anticipated that Katie Taylor was going to start fast. The first opening bell rings, and sure enough, Katie Taylor came out full speed, just delivering fire. And we basically had round 11 rather than round 1. These 2 women picked up where they left off. And Chantelle Cameron had said in that interview that she was ready for that. And if Katie came out fast, she was going to meet Katie Taylor square in the ring, in the center of the ring, and meet fire with fire. And she did. And it made the first round super exciting. Towards the end of the first round, Katie Taylor hits the canvas. The referee waves it off and deems it a slip. Early in the fight, but here we started seeing kind of what the pace was going to be. That was going to be set. People let it go. People ignored it. The women fought through. Round 2, Katie Taylor picks up the action a lot more. But Chantelle, in my opinion, still pulled it off. Some people gave Katie Taylor that second round. I still had Chantelle up round 1 and round 2. Round 3 and 4 I gave to Katie Taylor. I gave her round 7, round 9. The rest were for Chantelle Cameron, which would have given her a 96-94 in my book. Similar to that of last May. By late round 4 and round 5, which is the key round that caught my attention all the way until the fight ended, Katie Taylor must have been instructed by her corner. I didn't catch it on the mics. I didn't catch it when I was viewing it. I've tried to watch the replays. I haven't seen that. But it almost seems like the plan was, you started fast. It's not playing to our favor. Plan B is, let's hope you're up on the cards if you start fast and interrupt the pace down the stretch. Walk away with your hand raised with a decision victory. Stick and move, stick and move, stick and move. clinch and move, grab and go. That seems like the plan. And it seems super obvious that she was going to start fast, get up on the cards, and then start clinching and hitting on the reset and hitting on the move, on the break, to try to get some points. Easy points, quick points, and get out of trouble. And then clinch, interrupt the play, and interrupt the pace, interrupt the flow, and then get out and land on the break. It was evident. It was obvious to me. It should be obvious to you too. We saw the same fight. Or at least there's one fight that took place, but perception is different, as evident by the judges' scorecards. Round 5 was very key to me because the clinching began there. The clinch fest. And it wasn't at random. Unnecessary clinching from round 5 all the way to round 10, which borderline illegal holding. There was illegal holding of the gloves, illegal holding of the arms. Meanwhile, the inside proximity that these two women were caused numerous head bumps, headbutts, cuts. A huge gash for Chantelle Cameron on her forehead. Inside fighting, we saw a lot of forearms hitting the side of the face, a lot of gloves hitting the back of the head, on numerous occasions by both women, but more so on the hands of Katie Taylor. Chantelle Cameron stood her ground, started landing nasty uppercuts, which wobbled and shook Katie Taylor on numerous occasions throughout the fight down the stretch. Uppercuts, inside fighting, uppercuts to try to break the clinch and try to break the hold. Chantelle Cameron complaining to the referee, putting her gloves in the air. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to call something? To no avail. So numerous scenarios play out here. Is this a big money grab? Hence why we returned to Dublin to the 3 Arena, so she could have a big celebration and a big victory in her home and set up a potential trilogy, which seems as the most obvious route at this point. Is this a scenario of compromised judges? At the minimum, one of the judges, the one who issued a 98-92 card. A compromised ref. Who was in there firsthand and apparently blind as a bat and warning the wrong fighter. Or only one fighter. That being the visiting fighter, nonetheless, the champion, was being warned. Referee wiggled his finger at the champion numerous times, being Chantelle Cameron. Yes, Katie's a champion also, but this was Chantelle Cameron's division, and she was the defending champion both nights. Is this a money grab? Was this a setup? Was this corrupt? Was this fight stolen? Was there a robbery? Compromised judges? Bought out ref? All these questions arise when you have a close fight with numerous infractions taking place, no enforcement taking place, and the home fighter walks away with the victory. And you have a scorecard with 6 rounds favoring the fighter whose body of work for that night did not warrant 6 rounds to her favor. You once again had, matching that of the May scorecards, which were one draw and two 96-94 cards seen at for Chantelle Cameron back in May. We had a draw again, 95-95 by one judge. We had a 96-94 for Katie Taylor. I saw it 96-94 for Cameron. But still, those are not far-fetched scores because of the style of fight that we witnessed. So it's okay if Katie got a 96-94. I'm all right with that. Because we can't catch everything either. We have the best seat at home. The best seat in the arena is the one at home. Because you get replays, you get this, you get that. But when the round ends and you call it, and then you see a replay and you're like, dang, like, I don't think she won. Or you see a network favoring all the replays to one fighter, all the positive replays of one fighter landing punches and the other fighter getting hit, who's the visiting fighter, and you start seeing the network pushing it for one side over the other. That's the power of replay. So in your opinion, you're going to be like, dang, Katie Taylor really smoked her. Then the fight ends and you start seeing headlines across social media and the next day on newspapers and different websites, news sites with Cameron's face all bloodied, Katie Taylor's hand raised, and headlines like Katie dominates. Katie wins again. Katie avenges her loss. And the images of Cameron all bloodied up give you the understanding that Katie Taylor just destroyed Cameron. Just beat her up, bloodied her up, and took her titles. But that's not what we witnessed. And time and again, I tell you, and you guys could hold me honest to this, go back and check my catalog. Any questionable fight that you think, in your opinion, happened, go back and see if I covered that fight, and you'll hear me completely going off on a rant about these judges who get their all expense paid trip and get the hotel amenities and the dinners and the this and get flown to the site and blah, blah, blah. Especially when there's a big profile fight. Not when you're an up and coming judge, but when you're already somewhat established and you get called up on a job like this, you're going to get catered to and taken care of. And then they sit there and they might as well not even be watching the fight because it seems like they already know what score they're going to be issuing out. It sucks for the fighters. Where does Chantelle Cameron go now? She just lost the titles that she fought so hard for to unify and earn, just like Katie Taylor did at 135. So we have a little bit of a gift here that took place. An added admonishment or accomplishment. An added tally for Katie Taylor's resume and accomplishments in her body of work. That, in my opinion, didn't need to happen because her legacy is cemented. This just adds decor. Then you see headlines on X that I came across, such as, Ireland did right by Katie on this one. Another comment that I saw where a lady said, I'm glad to see Katie have gotten her titles back. Again, fandom, uneducated, because these were Cameron's titles she was fighting for. She always had her titles from 135 with her. She was challenging somebody else's throne. Another one that really irked me before I got off social media was Katie deserved this victory. I get and respect the sentiment where that comment comes from, but come on. We all know and follow and love this sport, and we know that these fighters earn their victories, earn their accomplishments, earn the respect of the people. Not get it handed to them because your opinion is that they deserve it. Just give him the title. He deserves it. He's got a big social media presence. Just give him the title because, well, hell, they're at home. Why not? I'm sure I looked too deep into that, but that's the mood that I was in after witnessing that fight. I wasn't happy at all because it sucks for Chantelle Cameron. She goes to Dublin. One thing is, if the first fight happened in England and the rematch happens in Dublin, both were there. She was the guest with contractually all the agreements and all the weight favoring that of Taylor, and her title's on the line with no recourse for her other than monetary gain. So she signed on the dotted line. 98, 92. 96, 94, 95, 95. One of those judges was either in on it or witnessed a whole different fight. How is it that he saw a completely different fight than his other two partners, all sitting from different vantage points, but all sitting at ringside? So is it an issue of a money grab? Well, all signs are pointing to yes. Could it be an incompetent ref? Or was he in on it? Was it an incompetent judge or an experienced judge? Well, it looks like he has well over 300 or 400 fights under his belt. So if he continues to get called upon, especially on big fights like this, he can't be incompetent. Can't be an issue of incompetence. So do we have a compromised judge? It sucks. Because the last thing I want to spew on my show is anything that of negative. Now, it is what it is. Where do we go from here? Katie Taylor now sits as the Undisputed Champion in 2 divisions simultaneously. Does she shed these titles? Does she shed the 135 titles? Is she going to do a fight in each? In my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of you share this view with me, I only see 2 fights left for Katie Taylor. There's nothing else for her to prove. Everybody else could be calling her out. We have Alicia Baumgartner at 130, who's still undisputed. We have Amanda Serrano, who has done amazing things for the sport of women's boxing and for the sport of boxing in itself. She's probably one of the best Puerto Rican boxers, not female boxers. One of the best talents to come out of Puerto Rico when speaking about boxing. Amanda Serrano, undisputed at 126. Who wants that rematch with Katie Taylor, had the rematch with Katie Taylor, ends up getting injured. Enter Chantelle Cameron back in May. 2 fights for Katie Taylor, in my opinion. A trilogy fight with Chantelle Cameron, and the rematch with Amanda Serrano. She went to New York, got the nod over Serrano, wanted to run it back in Ireland. Croke Park is what they keep mentioning. So I see that happening for Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor in what will be a huge payday for both and a big money maker for Matchroom. Easy to market. Big money maker for MVP, Jake Paul's promotional company. Easy fight to sell for DAZN, who will be the primary network for this fight once again. That should happen as the farewell for Katie Taylor in Ireland, the rematch with Amanda Serrano. And the other narrative that seems to be floating out there is Saudi Arabia for the trilogy fight against Chantelle Cameron. Which one do you do first? Do you take on Amanda Serrano first, or do you go handle the trilogy? And even if you lose the titles, remember, Katie and Chantelle have now given each other the first defeat of each other's career. Katie loses the titles back to Chantelle Cameron. Cameron gets back on top, regains her throne. Katie still holding all the belts and all the glory at 135. In her last fight, she returns to Ireland and farewells against Amanda Serrano in what will be an all-out war and possibly the biggest payday, not just in women's boxing, but potentially in boxing. It will be that big of a fight. Maybe not Mayweather-McGregor numbers, but it'll be up there. And that's how I see the path to Katie Taylor's career. 2 fights left. No need to fight anybody else. No need. It's done. She's 37, soon going to turn 38. This is it. You've done everything you needed to do in the sport. You've raised the sport to new levels. You're going to be a legend. Win or lose, you have 2 fights left, in my opinion. Regardless of what happened this Saturday, this is, in my opinion, not a necessary accomplishment that she needed to add to her resume for us to recognize her as an all-time legend and one of the absolute best, if not the best, in women's boxing. But this definitely adds and raises her to the level of Claressa Shields. And I think that's where it's headed. Just trying to cement her as the absolute best. This gets her up there. 2 fights left. I hope Cameron gets the trilogy fight. She gets to avenge this. And she's going to have to be ready, not just for the headbutts and for the quick starts, but she's going to have to be ready for a ref not willing to call the unnecessary clinching, holding, grabbing, what have you, to get her throne back. This is where we start seeing the dwindling of Katie Taylor's career, because she couldn't box toe-to-toe with Chantelle Cameron anymore. She's deteriorating. She's aging before our eyes, a young 37-year-old. But in boxing, that's old. She's put a lot of miles, a lot of work, a lot of wear and tear. Camps are getting harder. Competition is getting better. Tougher. She's done more than enough for women's boxing. It sucks because you get a bad taste after Saturday, but you can't help but be happy for her, for Irish boxing, for the sports scene, the way that arena just blew up. They didn't care about the details such as we're covering here. They just cared that their boxer, their fighter won and made history. That's what I see. For Chantelle Cameron, I don't know where her route is. The only fight that I see for her, I mean, what is she supposed to do? Start climbing up, move up to welterweight? She already beat McCaskill, who tried to take her title similar to what Katie did, but came up short. So what do you do if you're Chantelle? Do you move up to welterweight? Do you just take another fight and hope that you get the call for the trilogy? Do you immediately get the trilogy? That's what I would be fighting for. And I hope Eddie Hearn and her management team do right by her, because that's it. That's what we got to do. The trilogy fight, and then Katie closes her career with the rematch against Amanda Serrano. Meanwhile, Chantelle continues her career. She's got a couple more years, definitely several more years in her career. Impressive scene. But again, the scores, just to close out. If that knockdown would have counted in round 1, that 96-94 would be a 96-93 for Chantelle. At the minimum, count the knockdown, because we all saw it. The ref missed it. All right. But what about all the holding and the grabbing and the unnecessary clinching, which ended up causing headbutts and markings and cuts? Chantelle came out with a cut on her nose and her head. Huge gash on her head, on her forehead. So at the very minimum, if you do not take a point away from Katie Taylor for what we're just talking about, at the very least, if a warning would have been issued, it would have changed the entire style and flow that the fight was falling into, with the clinching and holding and so forth, and would have forced Katie Taylor to start boxing. Because if she continued doing so, and an evident warning that would have been issued, the next step would have been a point deduction. So it would have forced Katie to fight differently, and the way Chantelle was landing on her, without eliminating the holding and the clinching, Chantelle was landing clean on Katie Taylor. She has her number. She's able to move in on her and land on her, just like Katie was landing on Chantelle. This is not like it was a complete robbery. Katie Taylor fought. Katie Taylor fought as best as she could. And she's going to do whatever she has to do to win, just as any boxer will. And they're going to push that limit and push the envelope, because that's the referee's job, to enforce what's going on in the ring. And when the referee doesn't, the boxers are going to try to pull out any and all stops to sway momentum and the fight in their favor. And this is what we witnessed. The expertise, the knowledge of Katie Taylor and the corner, they tested the referee and he failed miserably. And they came away with the victory. They did what they had to do to get out that victory and get the nod. And they did. So the referee alone was enough help for Katie on Saturday. And then we got the judge giving her a 6-round slide. Only 2 rounds to Chantelle in a 10-round fight. Crazy. And she's the one that pulled the knockdown that was deemed a slip. So at the minimum, the warning would have changed the flow of the fight and the type of fight that we witnessed. A point with no knockdown would have still given her a 96-93. Or maybe even pushed that draw. But there was no place for the 98-92 card. So, it is what it is. But you can't help but be happy for Katie Taylor. Congratulations to Irish boxing, to Irish combat sports, because you guys put on a hell of a show and a hell of a scene, and the crowds are anything but electric. They are loud, and they show love for combat sports and specifically their home fighters. Awesome scene out there. So I leave you guys all with that jam-packed episode. Let me know what you guys think. Because if you guys think I'm completely off my rocker and I saw a completely different fight than what I witnessed and what I'm talking about, let me know. What is it that you don't like? Do you guys think I'm being too harsh on Katie Taylor? I don't think I am. I think I'm being anything but fair. And I'm willing to hold it to the fighters that I personally like and I grew up admiring and following. And if I'm able to acknowledge that when they ended up getting a so-called quote-unquote gift or got away with one, if I'm able to say it, why are you not? Why are you not able to do the same? Why jump into the emotion and just be like, don't talk about my fighter like this and don't ever criticize so-and-so? I'm only mentioning that because I saw certain comments of people saying, just losing their cool with other people who were immediately calling out robbery and this and that. Hey, it's a mixture of things of what happened. It's easy to go to the corruption and the fix is in a heist in Dublin. That's one of the headlines that I saw. A heist in Dublin. I mean, it's easy to jump to that, but there was multiple things that took place here, and it all landed on the ref, and he didn't do his job, and it started there. And then the judge, who witnessed a whole different fight than what we saw. The 96, 94s, that ends up being on par with what we witnessed. It was a closely contested, tight fight that you could have given it either way. Hell of a scene in Ireland at the 3 Arena in Dublin. And, well, we'll see. We'll see how Katie Taylor's career dwindles down, but that's the path to what I'm seeing right now. Trilogy with Cameron and a farewell fight and a long-awaited rematch with Amanda and off to the sunset for Katie. Let's see if it plays out that way. If it does, great. Buy me a drink because I called it right. If it doesn't pan out like that, it sucks because I don't think Katie Taylor needs to fight anybody else or prove anything else in the sport of boxing. Just let her be. And I hope that her agents manage her as such and Matchroom manages her as such and takes care of her instead of trying to milk her for every last bit of energy that she could give. There's nobody else that Katie Taylor should be fighting now. That's it. She's done. She's done enough. And we're grateful for it. Those are the last 2 fights. And if she walks away, kudos to her. My hat's off to her, as all of yours will be as well, I'm sure. Because she's done enough. And she deserves to just enjoy her family and ride out into the sunset with the current body of work. But if she is to continue, those are the only 2 fights we see. All right. That is it. Long episode, long drawn, long-winded, but I'm sure many of you shared these opinions and these frustrations. And if you didn't, then maybe I frustrated you a little more with my breakdown of the fight. But I want to hear about it. That's what makes this all entertaining and fun and keeps us so involved with the sport that we love and care about so much. I'll leave you all with this. Have yourselves an amazing night, and I hope that you all find yourselves well and safe and healthy and surrounded by those you love. And I will catch you all on the next episode. Have yourselves a great night. I'm Hick Callie. This is a Tomatolito Boxing Show.